His first love had always been her. For a brief moment she seemed close enough to reach. Yet the feelings in her heart were never meant for him. They belonged to someone else from the very beginning. To her he was nothing more than someone she could use when needed. That painful truth slowly became impossible to ignore. Because of that he made a choice. For her sake he would become someone worthy of standing beside the girl he loved. The story then shifted to classroom. The classroom lecture dragged on for what felt like forever. Boredom slowly built with every passing minute and made the wait feel even longer. The endless lesson only made the wait feel heavier. With nothing interesting to hold her attention, she continued sitting through the lecture. His thoughts drifted elsewhere as she remembered Casita from the previous week. The memory left her wondering whether Casita had finally grown tired of the situation after everything that had happened. Mitsugi-senpai had finally replied to her message. That single reply filled her heart with excitement and sent her rushing forward without a second thought. Then a forgotten responsibility surfaced in her mind. The realization struck immediately. Her part-time job was waiting, and she had completely forgotten about it. A laugh escaped as she hurried away from the awkward encounter. There was no time left to stand around. If he managed to leave now, then there was still a chance to arrive on time. The thought pushed him forward as he hurried through the hallway without slowing down. The next second, everything went wrong. A sudden figure appeared in his path, and the collision came before either of them could react. Surprise escaped both of them, as the impact brought their hurried steps to a stop. The crash was strong enough to leave him biting his tongue. As the shock faded, he finally looked at the person standing before him. A brief silence followed while the realization settled in his mind. Had he just gotten in her way? A quiet apology was all he left behind before continuing down the hallway. The brief encounter ended as quickly as it had begun, and soon only his retreating figure remained in sight. The girl watched him disappear into the distance. That familiar presence had appeared once again. For some reason, that person always seemed to drift into view when least expected. His name was Tuda Tsuyoshi, a student from the class next door, whose reputation was known far more than his actual personality. That lack of familiarity only made him seem more intimidating. The quiet atmosphere around him. Very few people knew much about him. Most students had never bothered to learn what he was usually called, or what kind of person he truly was beyond the cold impression he gave others. To them, he was someone who never understood how normal people were supposed to live and interact with each other. People saw Tsuyoshi as nothing more than a strange boy. That impression followed him for years. During elementary school, he studied at a school that was considered unusual. Various circumstances eventually led to a transfer and brought him to an ordinary middle school in the countryside. The change of environment did little to change his situation. Tsuyoshi had never been taught how to build friendships with other people. The simple things that came naturally to others remained unfamiliar to him. Because of that, he spent his middle school years alone. Even after entering high school, nothing truly changed. Forming connections with others still felt impossible, and not a single person could be called a friend. The strange boy everyone talked about continued walking through school life by himself. To Hannah, his appearance stood out far too much. Drawing attention wherever he went only invited unnecessary trouble. That was why she urged him to use the back entrance next time instead of showing up so openly again. Hanazono Hannah was the one person who had remained by Tsuyoshi's side since childhood. Their connection began long ago when they were still children, and somehow continued even after all those years had passed. Tsuyoshi accepted the complaint without resistance. The earlier incident had happened because of him, and there was little room to argue otherwise. An apology came naturally as he admitted that he had accidentally looked in her direction. Hannah accepted the explanation with a reluctant sigh. The annoyance in her expression softened as the conversation continued. Even after scolding him, she remained willing to listen. Hannah had only one condition for the day. Tsuyoshi would stay with her and keep her company until she was completely satisfied. The request sounded simple, yet it carried the confidence of someone who knew she would never be refused. The hours that followed were spent together. They sat across from each other in a cafe. They wandered through shops while Hannah excitedly explored everything that caught her interest. And because of that, Tsuyoshi could only reach one conclusion. Throughout all this time, he had merely been someone Hana chose to use whenever she needed him. That belief had followed him for years. He had no reason to be kind to a person like her. No reason to spend time with him. No reason to stay by his side. Tsuyoshi kept walking while the same thought lingered in his mind. No matter how much time passed, he still believed Hana was only being kind because it benefited her somehow. At that moment, he did not care about anything else. Then Hana suddenly called out to him and told him to look. A stray cat had appeared nearby. The moment she noticed it, her attention shifted completely. She quickly crouched down beside the cat and happily reached out toward it. Tsuyoshi watched quietly while Hana worried about what the stray cat could eat crepe. The idea sounded innocent enough until Tsuyoshi pointed out that the cream would not be good for the cat. She wondered if feeding it a strawberry crepe would be fine. As she looked down at the cat, a faint smile appeared on her face. The time he spent with Hana had taught his many small things he would never have known on his own. Spending time with Hana had become something precious to Tsuyoshi. The hours he spent beside her gave him a feeling he had never experienced before. For a little while, those ordinary moments made him feel as though he was living a normal high school life. A life filled with simple outings after school and casual conversations that most people would consider ordinary. Thanks to Hana, his world had slowly begun to change. Tsuyoshi had never cared about romance. Feelings between a boy and a girl had always seemed distant and impossible to understand. Yet after spending so much time with Hana, he had started to understand a little of what those feelings might be like. The warmth of having someone waiting for him. The comfort of sharing ordinary days together. The quiet happiness hidden inside moments that others might consider meaningless. If Tsuyoshi was not misunderstanding those feelings, then perhaps the answer had been in front of him for much longer than he realized. The more time he spent with her, the more it felt as though Hana might hold feelings for him as well. Small moments that once seemed meaningless now lingered in his mind long after they had passed. Thoughts of Hana began to follow him, even during the quiet hours of the day. Her smile and her presence returned to him again and again without invitation. Before he realized it, those feelings had already started to change. Little by little, Tsuyoshi had begun to develop feelings for Hana. The next day, Tsuyoshi remembered Hana's request. She had told him to pick her up through the back entrance, so he would not attract unnecessary attention again. The suggestion sounded reasonable. If drawing attention only caused trouble, then avoiding notice seemed like the better choice. As he approached the meeting place, a familiar voice suddenly stopped him. The unexpected greeting belonged to Hana's friend. Before Tsuyoshi could make sense of the situation, a surprising question followed. To her, it already looked obvious. Hana and Tsuyoshi spent so much time together that the answer seemed self-evident. For a brief moment, Tsuyoshi stood frozen. Was everyone really starting to believe that Hana and Tsuyoshi were dating? The question caught Hana completely off guard. When asked whether there was someone she liked, she hesitated for a moment before finally giving an answer. There really was someone special in Hana's heart. The name that left her lips was not Tsuyoshi. The person Hana liked was Midasuji senpai from the basketball club. For the first time, he was forced to face a truth he had never considered. The feelings Hana carried had never been meant for him. They had always belonged to someone else. Hana quickly dismissed the misunderstanding before it could grow any further. Tsuyoshi was always around her because he had been her childhood friend for as long as she could remember. Their time together came from years of familiarity rather than anything romantic. To Hana, the relationship was simple and easy to explain. In her eyes, he was more like a dependable boy who was easy to ask for favors, someone who would quietly help whenever she needed him. Tsuyoshi remained silent while Hana's friends laughed the misunderstanding away. To them, the answer was obvious. There was no reason to keep joking about something that could never happen. After all, Midasuji was exactly the kind of person many girls admired. Popular and impressive in a way that naturally drew attention. The conversation moved on with easy laughter. Hana laughed along with them and accepted their words without any hesitation. Tsuyoshi arrived at the classroom with a simple question. Hana had invited him to spend time together after school, and he only wanted to know if those plans were still going ahead. The sudden appearance caught everyone by surprise. The conversation stopped at once, and an awkward silence spread through the room. Hana turned towards Tsuyoshi and greeted him with a small smile. One of Hana's friends immediately remembered the discussion from earlier and hurriedly tried to leave before making the situation even worse. Meanwhile, the others exchanged uneasy glances. The boy they had jokingly called someone easy to use had arrived at the worst possible moment. A quiet whisper passed between them as the realization finally sank in. There was a chance Tsuyoshi had heard everything. One of Hana's friends quickly tried to stop the teasing before it went any further. The joke had already gone far enough, and there was no reason to make the situation worse. Soon it was time to leave. Hana cheerfully waved goodbye and told her friends that they would see each other again tomorrow. The others could only watch them leave together. Standing beside her, Tsuyoshi remained quiet. His expression revealed nothing as he listened to the farewell exchange. Hana followed after Tsuyoshi, but her usual energy slowly faded when she noticed the silence between them. For a moment, Hana lowered her gaze and struggled to find the right words. A simple greeting escaped her lips, yet the uneasy expression on her face revealed that something was weighing heavily on her mind. Tsuyoshi suddenly stopped and turned toward Hana. Then she gathered her courage and asked the question she could no longer ignore. Hana wanted to know whether Tsuyoshi had heard the conversation from earlier. She wanted to know if every word spoken inside that classroom had reached him. After all, Tsuyoshi had heard everything clearly. Every joke, every careless remark, every word spoken about him. Hana hesitated for a moment before offering a quiet explanation. To him, that seemed like the kindest solution. If the truth was painful, then perhaps it would be better to pretend nothing had been heard at all. After all, there was nothing to gain from reopening a conversation that had already revealed more than enough. The only thing someone like Tsuyoshi could do was quietly accept being seen as a boy who was easy to take advantage of. Yet he still could not let the matter go and asked what had really been discussed inside the classroom. So Tsuyoshi chose to hide the truth. He chose to bury the fact that there had once been feelings in his heart for Hana. That secret was better left untouched. You remember, Hana could not accept the idea that Tsuyoshi was only a childhood friend. Hearing that made her upset. Their relationship meant much more to her than those simple words. He remembered a time when Tsuyoshi was cleaning by himself. Everyone else had left the work to him. Seeing that made Hana angry. She immediately went over and helped him. Leaving Tsuyoshi alone like that never felt right to her. The thought only made Hana more frustrated. Tsuyoshi had always been kind and dependable. Yet other people treated him like someone they could use whenever they wanted. Hana hated that. She wanted Tsuyoshi to stop worrying about them and go home with her instead. Another memory followed. He remembered the promise they had made. They were supposed to go to Shinjuku together because a special shop was opening there. Hana had been looking forward to it for days. She had even picked clothes for Tsuyoshi to wear during their study session the next day. Ever since morning, she had been excited for their time together. Those feelings finally spilled out. Tsuyoshi was someone precious to Hana. She did not like seeing other people make fun of him. In her heart, only Hana was allowed to tease Tsuyoshi. No one else could do that. Tsuyoshi remembered the truth Hana had revealed. The person Hana liked was Mitsuji-senpai. That fact alone was enough to erase every misunderstanding that had remained in his heart. As that realization settled inside him, Tsuyoshi began questioning something he had never understood. He did not know what romantic feelings toward another person were supposed to look like. Because of that, he had once believed Hana might feel the same way about him. The answer became clear before long. Hana had never seen Tsuyoshi that way. Everything was exactly as it had always been. A simple conclusion formed in Tsuyoshi's mind. Whenever something painful happened, it was easier to reset everything and start over from the beginning. Leaving those feelings behind seemed like the best choice. The unexpected question made Hana stop in place. Her thoughts froze for a moment as those words echoed in her mind. The question remained there. Whether Hana and Tsuyoshi were really a couple. Whether the two of them shared that kind of relationship. The simple question left Hana unable to answer right away. Hana stood there in silence. Her reaction came too late, and her face grew stiff from embarrassment. The question that should have been easy suddenly felt impossible to answer. Tsuyoshi continued walking ahead, while Hana remained standing behind him. A small voice finally reached Tsuyoshi. Hannah tried to call out to him, but the words barely escaped her lips. She called for his attention once and then again. Hannah stepped forward and held out a small envelope toward Tsuyoshi. The gesture carried a hesitation she rarely showed. Even so, she gathered her courage and offered it to him. Tsuyoshi looked at the envelope in Hannah's hand, and a quiet thought crossed his mind. Receiving a letter like this was usually called a love letter. The situation resembled the scenes often seen in stories about romance. The thought disappeared almost immediately. Hannah had already received his answer without needing to ask. Tsuyoshi understood what the envelope truly meant. That realization brought back the words he had overheard before. Hannah often spent time with him because they had known each other since childhood. To Hannah, he was someone dependable, someone easy to ask for help whenever she needed it. The truth was simple. The letter was not meant to confess Hannah's feelings. Hannah liked someone else. The person in her heart was Mitsugi-senpai. Tsuyoshi was only the one chosen to deliver the letter. Tsuyoshi could not clearly understand what the pain inside his chest truly came from. Whenever painful feelings appeared, he would erase them and start over. He had repeated that process many times before. The method was simple. If something hurt, then it could be reset. If a feeling became a burden, then it could be removed. That decision slowly settled in Tsuyoshi's heart. The pain he felt now would also be erased. Every emotion connected to that pain would be removed. To Tsuyoshi, this was what a reset meant. It was the act of wiping away every feeling that caused pain and returning everything back to the beginning. Tsuyoshi looked at Hannah, and a thought quietly surfaced in his mind. Perhaps this feeling was what people called first love. Hannah noticed something unusual in Tsuyoshi's expression. His face seemed different from usual, and that small change immediately caught her attention. While Hannah worried about Tsuyoshi, another conclusion quietly settled inside his heart. The feelings he carried for Hannah had become his first love. Yet that first love was never destined to be returned. The pain in his chest grew heavier. It left him unable to feel at ease. Tsuyoshi could feel that something was wrong inside his heart. An unclear feeling continued to appear again and again. The discomfort never disappeared, no matter how much he tried to ignore it. As those feelings continued to build, Tsuyoshi arrived at a lonely conclusion. Perhaps he was simply incapable of living like everyone else. Things that seemed normal to other people always felt distant to him. That belief slowly took root in his mind. Because of that, he chose to rely on his own method. Tsuyoshi made a decision inside his heart. Every feeling he had directed toward Hannah would be reset. The emotions that had quietly grown over the years would no longer remain. Tsuyoshi felt his heartbeat slowly return to normal. The pain that had filled his chest began to fade away little by little. The emptiness inside his heart quietly spread. The feelings that had troubled him moments ago were gone. Nothing remained to disturb him anymore. A memory surfaced in Tsuyoshi's mind. The time spent together with Hannah was no longer something special. Those days now felt like nothing more than memories from the past. Another memory followed. Hannah's smiling face that had remained in his heart for years appeared once more before quietly fading away. The feelings of affection he had carried for so long had already been erased. Tsuyoshi looked at Hannah and felt nothing. The feelings that had once filled his heart had completely disappeared. Hannah now seemed no different from any other person passing by. To Tsuyoshi, she had become a stranger. Not a single trace of affection remained. Hannah called out to Tsuyoshi's name. Tsuyoshi lowered his gaze toward the envelope in his hand. The purpose of the letter was clear. The image of Hannah's true feelings appeared in his mind. The person she liked was Mitsugi from the basketball club. The letter was meant to reach him. The situation became simple. Since the letter belonged to Mitsugi, then the next thing Tsuyoshi needed to do was deliver it to him. Tsuyoshi accepted the request without hesitation. Hannah often asked him for favors like this. Delivering a letter was nothing unusual. To him, it was simply another request from Hannah. Hannah looked at Tsuyoshi with confusion. Something about him felt different. Even the way he spoke seemed unusual. Tsuyoshi told Hannah not to worry. Understanding other people had never been his strong point. Even so, he would do his best to help. Since this was something Hannah wanted, he would make every effort for her sake. Hannah quietly listened to his words. The answer should have reassured her, yet the uneasy feeling in her heart only grew stronger. Hana nervously asked whether Tsuyoshi would really accept the request. The question carried a hint of expectation as she waited for his answer. Tsuyoshi did not hesitate. If it was a request like this, then he would naturally help. To him it was a simple favor, and there was no reason to refuse. Tsuyoshi calmly explained that if Hana wanted help then he would help. That was all there was to it. The request itself was not difficult. With the decision made, Tsuyoshi stated that he would deliver the letter to Mitsuji. The task was clear, and he intended to do it right away. After saying that, Tsuyoshi turned to leave. He excused himself and prepared to head toward his destination. Hana remained standing where she was. Watching Tsuyoshi walk away left her strangely unsettled. Hana froze in surprise as Tsuyoshi suddenly started walking away. The reaction she expected never came, and the situation slipped out of her control. Panic quickly replaced her confusion. Hana hurriedly tried to stop him and called his name again. She wanted Tsuyoshi to wait. Hana's voice reached Tsuyoshi from behind. She seemed to be shouting something at him. The sound was clear enough to hear. That thought disappeared almost immediately. Hana was probably just feeling embarrassed, since the letter was about her feelings for Mitsuji. Then hesitation at a moment like this was understandable. There was no reason for Tsuyoshi to think any deeper about it. Every feeling he once held for Hana had already been reset. The affection that used to guide his thoughts no longer remained. In his mind, the feelings he once carried for Hana had already disappeared completely. That day, Tsuyoshi delivered Hana's love letter to Mitsuji without delay. The letter that Hana had entrusted to him finally reached the person she liked. When Tsuyoshi met Mitsuji, he immediately understood why so many people admired him. Mitsuji was handsome and carried himself with confidence. He was exactly the kind of person who naturally attracted attention. Mitsuji accepted the letter and looked through it. Seeing his reaction made Tsuyoshi think that Hana's confession had probably succeeded. After that day, Tsuyoshi stopped going home together with Hana. The routine that had continued for years quietly came to an end. After that, Tsuyoshi deliberately kept his distance. He wanted to avoid creating rumors about Hana and Mitsuji. Since Hana liked someone else, there was no reason for him to stay close to her like before. There was another reason as well. The words Tsuyoshi had overheard that day still remained in his memory. Hana had described him as someone easy to rely on and easy to use whenever she needed help. With that thought in mind, Tsuyoshi continued walking forward. The distance between him and Hana slowly grew larger as their paths began to separate. A cat approached and rubbed itself against his leg. Tsuyoshi watched the small animal quietly, while the cat sought his attention without hesitation. Tsuyoshi thought that no food had been brought for him that day, and accepted it without much reaction. A cat approached and rubbed itself against his leg. Tsuyoshi watched the small animal quietly. As Tsuyoshi spent that quiet moment with the cat, he reflected that human relationships were extremely difficult to understand. That belief remained unchanged within him, even now. In the class, as someone realized that no umbrella had been brought along again, a simple thought crossed his mind that perhaps waiting at the station cafe until the rain eased would be the better choice. Meanwhile, his attention soon drifted elsewhere. Tsuyoshi remembered the cat from yesterday and thought about how thin it had looked. If he met that cat again today, he wanted to bring it some food. While those thoughts occupied his mind, Hana remained nearby. Hana approached Tsuyoshi in the classroom with a question that had been bothering her. Tsuyoshi looked at Hana in silence while listening to her question. Around them, the classroom remained as busy as usual, yet Hana's attention stayed on that one mistake. Hana could no longer keep the truth hidden. The question about why the love letter had been given to Tsuyoshi instead of Mitsuji finally reached its answer. Gathering all the courage she had spent so long building up, Hana revealed that the love letter had always been meant for Tsuyoshi. There had never been another person in her heart. Hana admitted that she did not know why things had become so complicated. Even so, she had worked hard to gather enough courage to give that letter to Tsuyoshi. Those feelings had never been intended for anyone else. Tsuyoshi could only stare at Hana in silence after hearing the truth she had finally revealed. Hana wanted to know why Tsuyoshi no longer walked home with her. She could not understand why he kept avoiding the time they used to spend together. The more Hana spoke, the more her feelings spilled out. She had been waiting for Tsuyoshi all this time. Even when they could not meet often, she still wanted to be with him whenever she had the chance. Hana suddenly stood before Tsuyoshi with a look that left everyone around them confused. The meaning behind her actions was something Tsuyoshi could not understand at all. Her feelings and the reason she had come to him remained completely unclear to him, while the classroom watched in silence. Tsuyoshi could only think that he truly did not understand what Hana was trying to tell him. Tsuyoshi reminded Hana that she had been the one who openly admitted in class that Mitsuji was the person Hana liked. Tsuyoshi also pointed out that she had been the one who described him as nothing more than a boy who could easily be taken advantage of. Tsuyoshi explained that Hana's words had made him believe Hana was asking him to deliver the love letter to Mitsuji. To him, that conclusion had seemed completely natural after everything Hana had said before. Hana immediately denied it and struggled to understand how Tsuyoshi had reached that conclusion. She could not remember ever saying anything that should have made Tsuyoshi think that way. Hana let out a shaky breath as tears continued to fall. Hana could not understand how Tsuyoshi had come to believe something like that. Hana had spent so long hoping for a different future that the misunderstanding felt almost unbearable. Hana confessed that deep down Hana had believed they would eventually become a couple. Tsuyoshi could still remember Hana describing him as a boy who was easy to take advantage of. He admitted that he had once carried the same feelings for Hana. Yet he also remembered how Hana had often talked about finding someone better than him. Now Tsuyoshi saw Hana as nothing more than an ordinary classmate. The feelings that had once filled his heart were gone. To Tsuyoshi, everything had already been reset and left behind. Tsuyoshi had convinced himself that staying close to Hana would only cause trouble for her. Rumors would spread and people would talk. Tsuyoshi finally realized everything had been a misunderstanding. Feeling guilty for hurting Hana, he immediately lowered his head and apologized. Tsuyoshi admitted the mistake was his fault and promised it would not happen again. Hana quickly told Tsuyoshi to raise his head. To Hana, it had only been a misunderstanding. Seeing Tsuyoshi blame himself so much left Hana flustered and unsure what to do. He knew that what had been lost could never truly return. Even so, Hana still gathered the courage to ask for one thing. Hana quietly hoped that from this day forward they could start walking home together again like before. In the end, Tsuyoshi accepted Hana's request without hesitation. A simple agreement was all Hana received, yet it was enough to bring a small sense of relief to her heart. To Tsuyoshi, it was something simple. Even after everything that had happened, he still treated Hana the same as before. Those words brought a little relief to Hana's heart. Tsuyoshi told Hana that if Hana wanted to talk, then Hana could simply talk to him like usual. There was no need to worry or hesitate. Hana froze in place as a fearful thought crossed her mind. Hana wondered if Tsuyoshi wanted to do the same thing again as yesterday. The memory still lingered in her heart and made her voice tremble. Tsuyoshi realized that the distance between Hana and himself could no longer return to the way it had been before. A quiet understanding settled in his heart as he thought about Hana laughing and talking freely with someone else. Hana's cheerful smile lingered in Tsuyoshi's mind. The thought alone was enough to make everything feel truly difficult. Tsuyoshi knew Hana did not want to feel hurt. To protect herself, she chose to bury her first love and the feelings she had carried since childhood. She chose to lock those emotions away so she could continue living like any other ordinary student and enjoy her youth without pain. Seeing her again brought back memories of Hana as a childhood friend. Back then, Tsuyoshi had been much more troublesome than he was now. Hana looked at Tsuyoshi with surprise. A small sound escaped her as she tried to understand the sudden greeting. She reminded him that middle school required uniforms and school bags. She wondered why he was already dressed casually and carrying almost nothing. Tsuyoshi explained that he thought entering middle school only meant showing up. He had not known that a uniform and school supplies were necessary. The realization startled her, and she could only react with surprise. Tsuyoshi told Hana not to worry. Back in elementary school, he had often gone to school wearing whatever clothes he liked. To Tsuyoshi, it did not seem like a big problem. He urged Hana to hurry because they would be late if they stayed there any longer. Hana became even more flustered and wondered what she should do. The unfamiliar situation left her completely at a loss. While riding the train, Hana realized that Tsuyoshi had never properly ridden one before. That discovery explained many of the things that had confused her since morning. Hana decided to stay by his side and help him. An apology formed in his heart because he had not noticed her troubles sooner. Tsuyoshi remembered that Hana had been his childhood friend. Because of that, he felt it was natural to look after her. A simple thought crossed his mind, that after school they could even stop somewhere to eat together. However, Hana's words eased Tsuyoshi's heart. Hana explained that seeing Tsuyoshi smile again had only made her realize that all her worries had been unnecessary. Hana insisted that she had never truly been worried about him and asked Tsuyoshi not to misunderstand her feelings. Even though Tsuyoshi still remembered every memory they had shared, he believed those feelings no longer remained in his heart. Tsuyoshi looked at Hana and convinced himself that everything had already changed. The feelings he once held for her had already been reset and left behind. A teacher looked at Tsuyoshi's test paper and noticed the score. Tsuyoshi quietly looked at the paper without giving much of a reaction. The score spoke for itself, and there was little to say. Teacher Hana wondered whether Tsuyoshi had been too busy lately, because so many questions had been left unanswered. Around the classroom, the other students were already talking about the test results. Some admitted that almost every multiple-choice answer had been wrong. Others complained that a makeup exam was probably waiting for them. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi remained seated and listened to the conversations around him. Michiba Raka approached Tsuyoshi and asked about his test results. Raka wondered if Tsuyoshi had not taken the exam seriously. Tsuyoshi admitted that studying seriously would have been nice. Even so, he felt that his effort had still been lacking. Raka immediately called that excuse a lie. To her, Tsuyoshi had always been smart, and someone who could do much better than this. Everything had begun when Raka approached Tsuyoshi in the library. As the only person in class willing to talk to someone who had no friends, she naturally became part of his quiet days. When he noticed her work, he casually suggested that the problem would be easier to solve with a spatial vector formula. That simple piece of advice was enough to leave Tsuyoshi stunned. Raka looked at him with confusion after his sudden reaction. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi could only stare back in disbelief, as if he had never expected anyone to pay such close attention to him. That small encounter in the library quietly became the beginning of a connection that would slowly bring them closer together. Raka suddenly froze after noticing what Tsuyoshi was doing. A small sound escaped her lips as confusion quickly took over her expression. She could only wonder what was happening before Tsuyoshi calmly apologized and admitted that he had looked without meaning to. She stared at him in surprise as the realization sank in far faster than she had expected. Tsuyoshi explained that even he had once needed a long time to solve problems like that. The difficult mathematics questions were far beyond the level most high school students could handle, and he understood that better than anyone. As those words reached her ears, Raka could only stare at Tsuyoshi in silence. Raka listened as Tsuyoshi confirmed that he was indeed tutu from her class. Even after understanding his explanation, she still felt that his abilities were far beyond anything ordinary. The level that Tsuyoshi considered normal was already difficult enough to amaze her. When she learned that he could solve such problems so easily, she could only admire him even more. The more Raka looked at the completed answers, the more impressed she became. Solving those questions with such ease seemed unbelievable to her. Remembering that Tsuyoshi had once claimed he needed time to solve problems like that made her curious. Raka quickly asked about it and learned that Tsuyoshi came to the library every day to study. His simple answer revealed the effort hidden behind his talent and made her respect him even more. Raka looked at Tsuyoshi with bright excitement and eagerly hoped that he would teach her again on the following days. In her admiration, Tsuyoshi had already become a teacher worthy of respect. The title of sensei slipped from her lips so naturally that she did not even hesitate. Tsuyoshi quickly denied being a teacher and tried to explain that the title did not suit him at all. Before he could finish, however, Raka cheerfully corrected the misunderstanding and revealed what she truly meant. For Raka, the word sensei simply meant that she wanted Tsuyoshi to help her study in the library from now on. Her request was straightforward and filled with enthusiasm. Tsuyoshi sat in silence while thoughts quietly drifted through his mind. Usually his conversations with Raka only happened in the library. Moments like this inside the classroom were rare and unfamiliar to him. Raka looked at Tsuyoshi with curiosity and could not understand why someone as smart as him would intentionally leave answers blank. The question lingered between them as she waited for an explanation. When Tsuyoshi remained silent, Raka called out to him again and pulled him back from his thoughts. Raka suddenly invited Tsuyoshi to spend the day singing karaoke with the rest of their classmates. Since Tsuyoshi was always alone and rarely joined any activities, she wanted him to come along and enjoy himself with everyone else. When Tsuyoshi questioned the sudden invitation, Raka quickly explained that karaoke was much more fun when many people participated together. The word karaoke immediately painted a vivid image in Tsuyoshi's mind. A noisy room filled with excited voices appeared before him, while someone passionately sang about fleeting young love. The atmosphere felt overwhelmingly youthful and energetic. Tsuyoshi admitted that he would think about the invitation because places like that were not something he was used to. Even considering it already felt like a challenge for someone who usually kept to himself. As she watched him seriously weigh the decision, she could only think that Tsuyoshi sometimes felt more like an old man than one of their classmates. Raka suddenly asked whether the rumor was true. People were saying that Tsuyoshi had broken up with Hana. The question left Tsuyoshi confused. He could not understand why anyone would think that. The rumor itself made little sense to him. Tsuyoshi quietly explained that Hana had never been his girlfriend. They had only been childhood friends since long ago. There had never been a relationship between them. Raka accepted the answer without much surprise. To him it was neither more nor less than that. Raka quietly considered Tsuyoshi's answer. Since there had never been a relationship with Hana, then that meant there was no reason to worry. A playful thought appeared in her mind, and she wondered if that made her a candidate to become Tsuyoshi's girlfriend. The sudden remark reached Tsuyoshi, while his thoughts were still occupied by the karaoke invitation. Raka soon shifted to a different suggestion. Rather than joining a large group at karaoke, she thought it might be better if only she and Tsuyoshi went together. Tsuyoshi immediately rejected the invitation. The proposal did not change his decision. Raka could not hide her disappointment. Tsuyoshi had rejected the invitation so quickly that it left her feeling a little dissatisfied. Tsuyoshi quietly thought about Raka. She was an important classmate and one of the few people who always treated him kindly. That was exactly why he refused. He did not want Raka to become the subject of strange rumors because of him. For many years people had looked at Tsuyoshi differently. He did not want Raka to receive those same looks. Raka did not give up after being rejected. If spending time alone together was not possible, then she suggested something else. After school, Tsuyoshi could come to karaoke with everyone from the class. Joining the group should make things easier. Raka continued with a small condition. If Tsuyoshi refused this invitation, then she would stop talking with him. Tsuyoshi finally agreed. The truth was simple. He had never gone to karaoke before, and the unfamiliar experience made him a little nervous. Even so, he decided to give it a try. Raka laughed lightly and told Tsuyoshi not to worry so much. She believed he would definitely become friends with the rest of the class if he gave them a chance. Raka looked pleased with his answer. Since Tsuyoshi had finally agreed, she decided to tell him the details after school. With that settled, she happily returned to her friends. In the end, Tsuyoshi found himself genuinely invited. While looking around the classroom, he saw Raka chatting with her friends and could only accept that he would be joining them after school. After the tests ended, Tsuyoshi checked his phone and found a message waiting for him. The message came from Raka and contained the location of the karaoke place. It was near Station X on Shikara Arcade Street, and everyone would be meeting there at 4 o'clock. Raka also reminded him not to forget to come. As he looked at the screen, a simple thought settled in his mind. After school, he would be going to karaoke together with his classmates. Tsuyoshi arrived near the meeting place while checking the time. It was still only 3 o'clock, so there was plenty of time before everyone gathered. As he walked through the city, a thought suddenly crossed his mind. The clothes he was wearing had been chosen for him by Hana. Remembering that fact brought back a familiar memory. Hana's voice echoed in his mind as clearly as before. She had complained that his clothes looked far too unfashionable. Even if he was going out with a girl, she could not believe he planned to wear his school jersey. Hana had strongly objected to the idea. Hana crossed her arms and tried to explain herself. Tsuyoshi's figure was good enough that clothes like those naturally suited him. That was the only reason she had chosen them. It was not because she thought he looked cool or anything like that. Tsuyoshi quietly wondered what he had truly felt during moments like that. What kind of feelings had existed inside him while spending time together with Hana? Yet no answer came to him. Even though he could still remember them clearly, he no longer understood the feelings that had once been attached to them. For some reason, those memories felt precious to him. Tsuyoshi walked through the street toward the meeting place. As he walked, he noticed that people were looking at him for some reason. The reaction left him confused. Today he was not wearing his school jersey. He was dressed in normal clothes, so there should have been nothing unusual about him. Even so, people continued to glance in his direction. Tsuyoshi could not understand why. The more he noticed those looks, the more puzzled he became. Tsuyoshi arrived in front of the karaoke building and confirmed that this was the correct place. After checking the time, he looked around the area. It seemed that nobody had arrived yet. With nothing else to do, Tsuyoshi decided to wait. Standing alone in front of the building made the time feel unusually slow. Before long, he found himself growing a little impatient while waiting for his classmates to appear. Tsuyoshi waited in front of the karaoke building, while people continued to pass by around him. The flow of people never stopped. Children passed by. Students passed by. Adults passed by. Even so, nobody from the class appeared. When he finally checked the time again, he discovered that it was already 6 o'clock in the evening. The result left him confused. Tsuyoshi began to wonder whether he had looked at the wrong time, or perhaps come to the wrong place. Yet neither explanation seemed possible. The details in Raka's message had been clear. Tsuyoshi finally decided to give up waiting. Since nobody had arrived, he thought it would be best to go home and apologized to Raka the next day for missing the gathering. Just as he was about to leave, his phone suddenly began to ring. Tsuyoshi answered the call and heard Raka's voice. The moment she realized what had happened, she quickly told him that he was at the wrong location. Raka explained that everyone had already been waiting in room 201 at the Shikara branch, near the east exit of Station XXX. The entire class was there waiting for him. Raka hurriedly told him to come over as quickly as possible. Tsuyoshi listened to the call while standing in silence. The situation felt so ridiculous that he could not even find the right reaction. As he ended the call, a doubt suddenly crossed his mind. Perhaps someone had played a prank on him and deliberately sent him to the wrong place. With no reason to stay there any longer, Tsuyoshi turned around and hurried toward the place where his classmates were waiting. Tsuyoshi finally arrived at room 201 and immediately apologized for being late. After making everyone wait for so long, he wanted to explain himself as quickly as possible. Before he could say anything else, a rough voice suddenly stopped him. A delinquent-looking boy sitting near the entrance glared at him and demanded to know who he was and why he was trying to enter the room. The unexpected reaction made Tsuyoshi freeze. For a moment, he could only stare at the people inside. What he saw left him completely stunned. The room was filled with strangers. Men and women he had never seen before were sitting around the tables and enjoying karaoke together. Some of them looked annoyed by the interruption. One person demanded to know why Tsuyoshi was staring. Another challenged him, as if he wanted to start a fight. Someone else complained that he was ruining the mood. The words left him stunned. The possibility of being in the wrong room had never crossed his mind until now. Even so, the man in front of him bluntly pointed out the truth. Tsuyoshi had entered the wrong room. Tsuyoshi could not accept what he had just heard. Raka had clearly told him this room number during the call. There should have been no mistake. As confusion filled his thoughts, the man suddenly offered a way to settle the misunderstanding. Since Tsuyoshi had interrupted their gathering, he could at least take a drink as an apology and put the matter behind them. Even so, one request remained. Since Tsuyoshi had disrupted the atmosphere for a moment, he should at least buy a drink and make up for the confusion he had caused. The people in the room did not seem angry anymore. Some of them even praised Tsuyoshi and found the situation amusing. To them, he looked surprisingly cool, and the awkward interruption had become part of the entertainment. Tsuyoshi accepted the suggestion without arguing. Since the mistake had been his own, he decided to apologize properly and buy the drink right away. The group appeared satisfied with that answer. Tsuyoshi glanced at the time before heading toward the machine. Standing in front of it, he paused in confusion. The machine was completely unfamiliar to him, and he found himself wondering what kind of machine it even was. Tsuyoshi stared at the drink machine with uncertainty. Since he had never used a machine like this before, he worried that pressing the wrong button might cause trouble or damage something. A woman nearby noticed his confusion and helped him. Thanks to her guidance, Tsuyoshi finally learned how to use the machine. After filling a cup with a drink, he listened as she casually asked what he planned to sing later. The woman noticed the drink in his hand and recognized the flavor immediately. It was fruit pepper. Holding the drink in his hand, Tsuyoshi quietly headed back toward the room. Tsuyoshi apologized once more for causing trouble. Since the interruption had been his fault, he felt responsible for the disturbance. The people in the room did not seem bothered anymore. They told him not to worry, because the situation had been entertaining enough. Some even mentioned that their younger friends had enjoyed it. Just as Tsuyoshi was about to leave, a woman stopped him and asked him to hold out his hand. A small candy was gently placed into his palm. Tsuyoshi looked at it in surprise. The woman casually explained that it was only an ordinary strawberry milk candy. The woman simply thanked him. Giving away candy was something she enjoyed doing. As he walked away, a small feeling of regret remained in his heart. Tsuyoshi quietly left room 201 behind. The people inside would probably continue enjoying karaoke after he was gone. Tsuyoshi had wanted to experience karaoke too. He had finally gathered the courage to come and see what it was like. Tsuyoshi stepped out of the karaoke building and quietly headed away from the entrance. As he walked, he glanced back once more. The gathering he had been invited to was still somewhere inside that building. The sight left him surprised. Raka and the others had really waited for him all this time. A small sigh escaped from him. Even after making everyone wait and causing trouble, Tsuyoshi had still failed to join them. The realization left him feeling a little guilty as he continued walking away from the karaoke building. Raka pointed forward with a mischievous smile. In her eyes, the whole situation had gone exactly as planned. To Raka, the answer was obvious. Tsuyoshi had completely fallen for the trick. The karaoke invitation had never been genuine in the first place. Inviting someone as socially awkward and inexperienced as Tsuyoshi had never been their intention. Raka covered her mouth with a faint laugh, as the sight of Tsuyoshi changing clothes just for karaoke made the whole situation seem even more amusing to her. She found it unbelievable how eager Tsuyoshi had been for the karaoke outing, and how far he had gone just to prepare for it. She quietly reflected that when viewed objectively, there was no reason anyone would seriously invite a socially awkward boy like Tsuyoshi to karaoke together. She agreed with that thought herself, and admitted that Tsuyoshi had been far too naive to believe it so easily. Raka reassured her friends that everything was fine, and pointed out how Tsuyoshi had even waited for 2 whole hours. Raka admitted that Tsuyoshi had seemed strange before, yet the casual clothes had changed that impression a little and made him look different than usual. Raka then revealed with a pleased smile that Tsuyoshi had a crush on her. To Raka, that felt perfectly natural, because Raka was a popular girl at school. The feelings Tsuyoshi received from those girls seemed filled with nothing but malice. Their laughter and actions looked like nothing more than a cruel joke in their eyes. Tsuyoshi became convinced that every one of them saw the situation as simple entertainment, and nothing more than a prank meant to mock him. Then a voice suddenly called out for Sensei, and drew everyone's attention towards something unexpected. In his memories, Raka happily told Sensei that thanks to him, she had finally been able to solve the vector problems that had troubled her. With a light laugh, she explained that those papers were only doodles and sketches made during idle moments in class. Even so, she found them impressive. Raka then showed the practice test sheets, and wondered if he had really gone so far as to create preparation questions for her. Raka then held out her phone, and proposed that she and him become friends from that day onward. Tsuyoshi had always believed Raka was simply a cheerful girl who often worried about him whenever he was alone. That warm image of her had remained firmly in his heart until now. Raka remained in Tsuyoshi's thoughts, yet a painful realization slowly took shape. Tsuyoshi finally understood that Raka had only relied on him whenever she needed help studying. As that truth settled deeper within his heart, the memory of Raka's smile no longer felt as warm as before. Tsuyoshi accepted that the pain lingering inside him was real. If those feelings truly hurt this much, then perhaps the best choice was to leave everything behind and forget it all. Tsuyoshi believed that the actions of unrelated people no longer mattered. Their cruel intentions and laughter could simply be ignored and left behind. Tsuyoshi looked at Raka laughing together with her friends and understood why the wound in his heart refused to disappear. The pain existed because Raka had once become important to him. Tsuyoshi wondered if none of it had happened, then perhaps this pain would not exist. Tsuyoshi decided that he would reset everything, just as he had done many times before. He would gather every feeling that brought pain to his heart and destroy them all. Tsuyoshi wondered how many times he had already repeated that process. Even so, he chose the same path once again. All the feelings that had once been directed toward Raka were erased one by one. Tsuyoshi removed every trace of them from his heart. The decision to erase everything had already been made, yet that voice still reached him. Raka hurried over with friend beside her and called out to Sensei after noticing how long Tsuyoshi had been waiting. She quickly explained that everything earlier had only been a joke. She insisted that it had been harmless teasing and nothing more. Raka then admitted that Tsuyoshi had waited for a very long time and claimed that the prank had gone too far. Even so, Raka smiled, as if expecting the misunderstanding to disappear with a few simple words. Raka cheerfully insisted that her friends had only been teasing Tsuyoshi, and that there had never been any malicious intent behind their actions. With that explanation, she invited Tsuyoshi to move to another karaoke place together. Raka then mentioned that when she told her friends how smart Tsuyoshi was, they immediately wanted to join as well. Raka even suggested that if Tsuyoshi had free time someday, he could help teach them too. Raka enthusiastically proposed enjoying karaoke until everyone was satisfied and looked at Tsuyoshi as though nothing had happened. Tsuyoshi offered an apology and revealed that going home felt like the only thing he wanted now. His voice carried no anger, and no hesitation. Surprise lingered across her face as she searched for a reason behind his decision. Behind her stood Tsuyoshi with a shadowed expression. She froze in confusion when Tsuyoshi chose to leave. The cheerful invitation to keep enjoying karaoke faded into a question about why he suddenly wanted to go home. Raka tried to laugh the situation away and wondered if Tsuyoshi was angry over nothing more than a joke. She even asked him to keep teaching her another time and hoped the mood would return to normal. Tsuyoshi offered an apology and quietly decided that he would no longer stay involved with Raka. The words fell into the silence with a weight far greater than any joke. Raka reminded him that everyone had gathered because of them and urged him to notice that much at least. Her voice carried a small plea for him to look beyond his own conclusion. A brief realization passed through Tsuyoshi. He admitted that perhaps he had been wrong. He accepted that deciding to leave without considering everyone else had been a selfish choice on his part. Tsuyoshi offered an apology and asked permission to leave. He felt that going home was the right choice now. Even while addressing Raka, he still called her Michiba. Raka hurriedly stopped him and apologized for what had happened earlier. He insisted that no apology was necessary because no special feelings had ever existed on his side. Those words were meant to ease his burden, yet they struck deeper than anything before. Then the truth she had been hiding finally surfaced. She revealed that Tsuyoshi's willingness to stay by her side and help with studying came from his feelings for her. Another apology followed. Tsuyoshi admitted that he could no longer understand what Raka was trying to say. The words reaching him felt distant and unclear, as though they belonged to a different conversation entirely. Raka stood frozen by her own mistake. He confessed that even after seeing her that he still failed to realize anything. He had not understood his feelings and had not noticed the meaning behind her actions. A strained smile remained on Raka's face, yet the weight of regret pressed heavily upon her. Tsuyoshi turned toward Raka with a gaze she had never seen before. Raka hesitated and wondered why he suddenly seemed so frightening, even as she called out to him as sensei once again. Then Tsuyoshi revealed the one thing he truly wanted. He wanted Raka to stop calling him sensei. The title that had always stood between them now felt unbearable to hear. Raka remained behind with her hands drawn close to her chest. The meaning of his words finally reached her and left her standing in silence. Tsuyoshi continued forward without looking back. Each step carried him farther away from the feelings he had tried so hard to bury. Tsuyoshi admitted that even when Raka showed expressions like that, he could no longer feel anything from her. The emotions that once stirred his heart no longer reached him the way they used to. Tsuyoshi looked at his hand and realized the pain was gone. That change came from a simple reason. Every feeling he once devoted to Raka had already been erased from his heart. The affection he had treasured for so long had been reset completely, and nothing remained except a quiet emptiness where those emotions used to be. The pain remained unpleasant, yet he believed this choice was necessary. Tsuyoshi had once hoped to gain a friend through Raka. After that, he erased every feeling he had carried for Raka. He did it so he could return to an ordinary life and free himself from emotions that had only brought suffering. Tsuyoshi continued moving forward through days that felt strangely bright. Since the karaoke incident, everything had changed. The image of Raka lingered in his memory, while the scene of her standing among the others refused to disappear. She no longer spoke to him, and the silence between them continued without interruption. The ordinary days Tsuyoshi had wished to recover finally returned. Tsuyoshi remembered how Raka had invited him to study together at the library once again. That memory lingered in his mind and refused to disappear. Tsuyoshi convinced himself that Raka had only approached him because she wanted help with studying. At the same time, Tsuyoshi felt exhausted from becoming involved with other people. Every connection seemed to end with another wound carved into his heart, and he no longer wished to repeat that cycle. Even so, Raka's presence remained behind. The memories refused to fade no matter how often Tsuyoshi tried to distance himself from them. Tsuyoshi feared that relying too much on the feelings erased by his reset would only bind him to the same pain once again. Tsuyoshi continued running while a bitter realization settled inside his heart. The lingering feelings that remained despite every attempt to erase them proved that his heart was far weaker than he wanted to believe. A sudden presence appeared behind him and caught Tsuyoshi's attention. The unexpected figure made him turn around in surprise while his steps briefly faltered. Hanazono Hana still remained in Tsuyoshi's memories. The feelings Tsuyoshi once carried for Hana had already disappeared and no longer lingered within his heart. Raka had also become part of those memories. The feelings directed toward her had vanished as well, and Tsuyoshi believed those emotions had finally been erased. Tsuyoshi rushed forward while carrying that hollow feeling. Yet the memories of both girls still remained. Those memories refused to leave him, and their presence only made the emptiness inside Tsuyoshi feel even greater. A distant voice suddenly called out to Tsuyoshi. Tsuyoshi immediately turned toward the source of that voice. Surprise crossed his face when he saw a small figure running desperately after him. The girl hurried forward while pleading for Tsuyoshi to wait a little longer. Her breath was uneven from the effort, yet she continued chasing after him without stopping. She finally caught up to Tsuyoshi after chasing him with all her strength. Relief appeared on her face as she tried to catch her breath. She felt fortunate that a park happened to be nearby. Because of that, she managed to stop Tsuyoshi before he disappeared from sight. Tsuyoshi sat quietly while listening to her. She looked at Tsuyoshi with a bright smile and introduced herself properly. She revealed that her name was Sasami Mimi and that she belonged to the athletics club. Sasami explained how she reached that conclusion. When she saw Tsuyoshi wearing a different colored athletics uniform, she assumed he was a second-year student and a member of a sports club just like her. She curiously asked what kind of club Tsuyoshi belonged to. The question came naturally as she tried to learn more about the senior sitting beside her. A brief silence followed before Tsuyoshi revealed the truth. Contrary to her expectations, Tsuyoshi did not belong to any club at all. Sasami could not believe Tsuyoshi's answer. After seeing him run so fast, she became certain that he was hiding something. She insisted that Tsuyoshi was lying. To her, the speed he showed was far beyond that of an ordinary student. She could not believe Tsuyoshi's answer. She insisted that Tsuyoshi was lying and firmly claimed that he must be hiding his true feelings. Even so, she believed her own feelings were honest. If Tsuyoshi truly did not mind, then there would be no reason for such hesitation. Holding on to that belief, she gathered her courage and asked for one simple thing. She wanted to run together with Tsuyoshi once again. She looked at Tsuyoshi with hopeful eyes and asked him to become her running coach. The request was simple, yet filled with sincerity. She wished to learn from Tsuyoshi and spend more time running beside him. The sight of Sasami stirred an old memory within Tsuyoshi. It felt strangely similar to the days with Raka. The same eagerness. The same request to be taught once again. Tsuyoshi remembered how Raka had once asked him to teach her. In the end, Tsuyoshi had reset his feelings for Raka and walked away from those emotions. The memory returned as Mimi stood before him with a request that felt strangely familiar. Mimi spoke about her dream of entering high school through an athletic recommendation. She admired the way Tsuyoshi ran and believed his form was the most impressive she had ever seen. That admiration had become a goal she wanted to chase. Mimi wanted results in athletics, even if only a little. Because of that wish, Mimi asked Tsuyoshi for help. With honest enthusiasm, Mimi asked him to teach the secret that allowed him to run so well and hoped to learn directly from him. Tsuyoshi hesitated for a moment. Mimi's hopeful expression made it difficult to refuse, and her disappointment was impossible to ignore. In the end, Tsuyoshi agreed on one condition. If it was only a morning jog, then he would not mind helping Mimi. That single answer was enough to brighten her mood. Joy quickly spread across Mimi's face. Mimi felt genuinely happy that Tsuyoshi had accepted, and the small wish she carried had finally come true. Their training began soon after. Tsuyoshi explained that running faster required proper posture and careful form. Mimi listened closely and tried to follow every instruction while learning from Tsuyoshi step by step. Mimi listened carefully as Tsuyoshi explained the basics of running. A proper posture required a straight back and a body that leaned slightly forward. Every movement needed to flow naturally toward the path ahead. Tsuyoshi continued his lesson and taught Mimi to push firmly with the tips of her feet. The force from each step should be used efficiently to drive the body forward and maintain speed. After trying the technique, Mimi rested briefly while thinking about his advice. Tsuyoshi noticed that her running form was still slightly hunched and pointed it out without hesitation. Mimi quickly accepted the correction. Mimi admitted that her posture was a little hunched and promised to improve her form. During training, Tsuyoshi explained that effort alone was not enough. A runner needed to understand which muscles were being trained and why those exercises mattered. Without that understanding, progress would be limited, no matter how hard the training became. Tsuyoshi continued by explaining that training could not be done blindly. Every exercise needed a purpose, and every movement needed to strengthen the body in the right way. Tsuyoshi simply wanted Mimi to understand that proper knowledge was just as important as determination. Mimi listened carefully while running beside Tsuyoshi. Tsuyoshi explained that any kind of training could be useful. What mattered most was understanding the purpose behind it and knowing why the body was being pushed in that direction. By training with a clear goal, Mimi would be able to see the difference. The muscles she used before and the muscles she trained now would no longer feel the same. As Mimi continued forward, she gradually began to understand his lesson. Each exercise carried meaning, and every effort produced a result. Through that understanding, Mimi would be able to feel the progress created by her training and move one step closer to her goal. Mimi looked at the result and finally realized how important proper running posture was. What had seemed like a small detail had already created a noticeable difference. Tsuyoshi acknowledged her progress. Mimi had managed to see the difference immediately, and that alone showed she was learning quickly. As they rested together, Mimi admitted that she had always believed running fast was the only thing that mattered. Until now, she had focused only on speed and little else. Tsuyoshi explained that there was nothing wrong with wanting to run faster. That desire could become a strong source of motivation and help Mimi continue improving. Mimi declared that she would keep running and push herself as hard as possible. Her excitement overflowed as she looked forward to every step ahead with bright determination. Tsuyoshi reminded Mimi that enthusiasm alone was not enough, and that arriving late for school would only cause trouble. The warning carried a quiet concern for her. Mimi suddenly realized how late it had become and hurried off in surprise. The thought of being late for school finally caught up with her. Mimi happily looked forward to meeting Tsuyoshi again the next morning. Tsuyoshi agreed, and accepted that promise of another early morning practice together. Mimi waved cheerfully, and Tsuyoshi promised to meet again the next morning before sunrise. Her voice remained full of energy and anticipation. The promise of meeting again every morning quietly became a part of their days from that moment onward. Tsuyoshi and Mimi kept running together every morning. Their training continued day after day, and repeated again and again as the mornings quietly passed. Tsuyoshi guided Mimi through each exercise and helped her improve little by little. Mimi accepted every lesson with enthusiasm and followed his advice with sincere determination. One day that change became impossible to ignore, and even Tsuyoshi found himself noticing how much Mimi had advanced through all of their time together. Mimi gradually became able to run much faster. Her growth became so remarkable that she almost looked like a completely different person. He noticed that her running had become much better than before. The improvement was clear enough that even she could no longer overlook it. Mimi proudly shared that she had even been selected as a regular member of the track team for an upcoming competition. That achievement made the result of all her effort feel real at last, and Tsuyoshi recognized it as something truly impressive. Tsuyoshi believed that everything came from Mimi's hard work and dedication throughout their training. Mimi happily accepted those words because they were exactly what she had hoped to hear from Tsuyoshi. Mimi presented a pair of leather shoes as a gift for Tsuyoshi. The gift came from Mimi herself, and the sight of it left Tsuyoshi genuinely surprised. Mimi had been thinking about this moment for a long time. She remembered that Tsuyoshi always went to school wearing the same worn-out sneakers, and that memory stayed with her. Tsuyoshi wondered if such an expensive gift was really acceptable for him to receive. Mimi assured him that it was simply her way of repaying everything Tsuyoshi had done for her. Mimi had worked very hard to choose those shoes. She believed that Tsuyoshi would be happy if the gift reached him, and that hope had guided every step of her decision. Mimi admitted that receiving the gift would make her happy as well. When Tsuyoshi saw Mimi smile, he suddenly found himself unable to look at the gift alone. That gentle smile remained in his thoughts and left a stronger impression than anything else. Tsuyoshi looked at the school building and found himself thinking that perhaps it was time to place a little trust in Mimi. The sincerity behind her smile and her feelings had not gone unnoticed. The new leather shoes carried him forward with each step. They were a reminder of the effort and kindness that Mimi had poured into the gift. Mimi called out to Tsuyoshi once more before they parted. That familiar voice reached him naturally and drew his attention back to her. Mimi then called for Tsuyoshi's attention once more. Tsuyoshi turned toward her as Mimi waited for him to listen to what she wanted to say next. Mimi cheerfully called out to Tsuyoshi and greeted him with bright energy. The upcoming competition would begin soon, and that thought filled her with excitement and motivation. Tsuyoshi noticed how enthusiastic Mimi was and quietly remarked that she seemed especially energetic that day. Mimi happily confirmed it and looked forward to training once again before the competition arrived. Tsuyoshi advised Mimi to be careful during practice and not push yourself too hard. Mimi listened with a small laugh because Tsuyoshi's concern was easy to understand. Mimi asked whether Tsuyoshi would come to watch her competition. The thought of seeing him there would make her happier than anything else on that important day. Tsuyoshi replied that he would do his best to come. His answer was not as direct as Mimi had hoped, and that only made her pout a little. Mimi wondered why Tsuyoshi answered in such a distant way when she only wanted a clear promise. She wanted him to come and watch her race without hesitation. Mimi walked ahead with a bright smile. A thought crossed Tsuyoshi's mind that Mimi might win first place in the competition. Tsuyoshi remembered how hard Mimi had trained and how much effort she had poured into every practice session. Shimizu Hakiai appeared before Mimi and questioned why she was staying in a place like that. He reminded her that training would begin soon and that they needed to go. Mimi froze when Shimizu suddenly appeared before her. Surprise filled her expression as she looked at him. Shimizu was the ace of the athletics club and a student from the neighboring class. Mimi quickly told him that she would head there right away. Mimi stood before Shimizu with a bright expression. From that reaction, Tsuyoshi immediately understood that Mimi liked him. A quiet thought crossed Tsuyoshi's mind. He felt that he should be more aware of the situation and leave that place at once. Shimizu faced Tsuyoshi with a cold expression. Even though it was only their first meeting, he felt the need to speak honestly. He questioned why Tsuyoshi had hurt Hana and could not overlook what had happened. Those sharp words reached Tsuyoshi without warning. He stood silent as Shimizu made it clear that forgiveness would not come because Hana had been hurt by Tsuyoshi's actions. Tsuyoshi could not understand Shimizu's words. He had only recently met Hana and had never even spoken with Shimizu before. The reason behind such anger remained completely unclear to him. As Tsuyoshi stood there in confusion, he could only wonder why Shimizu was treating him this way. The hostility directed at him felt sudden and unreasonable. Shimizu fixed a sharp gaze on Tsuyoshi and demanded his attention. His anger was obvious and far stronger than ordinary frustration. Shimizu's anger was not directed at Tsuyoshi for a simple reason. The sight of Hana wearing such a sad expression had left a deep impression on him and became the reason he could not forgive Tsuyoshi. Tsuyoshi could not understand any of it. He kept wondering why Shimizu was angry because of Hana's problem when the situation made no sense from his perspective. At that moment, he noticed Tsuyoshi talking with a member of the athletics club. Tsuyoshi continued searching for an answer. Shimizu was a member of the athletics club and had no connection to Hana as far as Tsuyoshi knew. Mimi hesitated for a moment. A sudden thought appeared in her mind and refused to leave. The possibility slowly took shape as Tsuyoshi wondered if Shimizu might have feelings for Hana. Shimizu froze for a moment when Tsuyoshi's question reached him. Shimizu immediately denied it. Shimizu could not understand why Tsuyoshi would say something like that. Shimizu insisted that he had absolutely no feelings for Hana. Shimizu even suspected that Tsuyoshi had been investigating him. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi quickly denied ever investigating Shimizu and insisted that nothing like that had happened. His frustration only grew as he demanded to know who Tsuyoshi thought he was. Shimizu could not accept seeing Hana cry because of Tsuyoshi. Shimizu was taken aback and could not hide his disbelief. Shimizu questioned how Tsuyoshi could be so rude towards someone he had only just met. Tsuyoshi insisted that she and Shimizu were classmates. Tsuyoshi believed their relationship was equal and ordinary. Because of that, he truly could not understand what Shimizu meant by those words. The confusion left Mimi unable to grasp the meaning behind the exchange, while Shimizu silently regarded Tsuyoshi as nothing more than a noisy child. Mimi hurriedly tried to change the atmosphere and called out to Shimizu. Mimi urged Shimizu to head to the clubroom because everyone was already waiting and practice was about to begin. Questions continued to linger in Shimizu's mind. He wondered who Tsuyoshi really was to Mimi. Nearby, a few students noticed the tense mood and wondered if someone had been arguing. He thought crossed his mind as he wondered whether Mimi knew Shimizu well or whether Tsuyoshi might even be Mimi's boyfriend. Mimi hurriedly denied it and insisted that Tsuyoshi was not that kind of person. Mimi tried to explain that Tsuyoshi was simply someone she knew. Shimizu immediately questioned what Mimi meant by simply someone. As Shimizu waited for an explanation, a troubling thought surfaced in his mind. He admitted that if someone wanted to be friends with a person like Tsuyoshi, then he would naturally start to dislike that person. Mimi fell silent for a moment. The conversation with Shimizu left an uncomfortable weight in her heart. Thoughts of Tsuyoshi drifted through her mind and made it difficult for Mimi to answer immediately. Mimi finally forced out an explanation. Mimi insisted that she did not know Tsuyoshi at all. According to Mimi, it had only been a coincidence that Tsuyoshi spoke with her for a short while. Mimi explained that she respected Shimizu. To Mimi, he was a senior in the athletic club and someone worthy of admiration. Hearing that explanation left Shimizu slightly relieved. Tsuyoshi quietly listened from a distance. Tsuyoshi learned that Sasami was a member of the athletic club and that relationships within the club could become complicated. Tsuyoshi also realized that if Sasami was disliked by Shimizu while still a first-year student, then serious trouble could follow. Tsuyoshi forced himself to hold back for now. He believed that Sasami's feelings were not her true feelings. Because of that belief, Tsuyoshi chose not to act rashly. He remained convinced that what Sasami showed now was not the genuine emotion hidden in her heart. Shimizu listened as Mimi admitted that lately Tsuyoshi had been following her everywhere and that it had started to bother her. Mimi even revealed that Tsuyoshi followed her during morning practice which made his presence feel especially unsettling. Shimizu immediately reacted with alarm. The possibility that Tsuyoshi might be a stalker crossed his mind, and he even wondered whether the situation had become serious enough to involve the police. Mimi quickly denied that conclusion. Mimi insisted there was no need for that, because Shimizu was already here now. Mimi believed the problem had practically been resolved. He happily urged Shimizu to hurry, because it was time to go. He also expressed complete confidence that Mimi would become the champion during the upcoming competition. The distance between them gradually grew as they walked away together. Tsuyoshi remained behind and watched their departing figures in silence. Every word that left Mimi's lips pierced Tsuyoshi's heart. Even so, Tsuyoshi convinced himself that Mimi had spoken that way only because she wanted the tense situation to settle down as quickly as possible. Mimi hesitated and softly called out to her senpai. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag, while uncertainty lingered across her face. Mimi offered a quiet apology. She admitted that she had no idea Tsuyoshi had been hated by Shimizu. She believed Tsuyoshi should have told her about it sooner. She felt that if she had known earlier, then things might not have become this complicated. She honestly admitted that she was a little upset with Tsuyoshi. She worried that her reputation could have been damaged because of what happened. She then brought up another matter that weighed on her mind. She recalled that Tsuyoshi had once made a girl cry, and the memory left her wondering what had truly happened back then. Tsuyoshi could only listen as Mimi admitted that she was truly angry. Mimi then made a firm request. From that moment onward, Mimi wanted Tsuyoshi to stop coming near her. The distance she asked for was clear and unwavering. Tsuyoshi tried to call out to Mimi. Only a fragment of her name left his lips before the memories he wanted to forget suddenly resurfaced. A vivid image of Mimi appeared in his mind. She had once smiled brightly and asked Tsuyoshi to become her teacher. That cheerful request remained deeply etched in his heart and refused to fade away. Left behind in silence, Tsuyoshi lowered his gaze and softly repeated Mimi's name. The memory of her smile lingered before him, while the reality of her rejection weighed heavily on his heart. Tsuyoshi lowered his head as memories continued to surface. Among them was the pair of shoes that Mimi had chosen with great care. Mimi had spent so much effort searching for them because she believed Tsuyoshi would be happy to receive them. That gift had been Mimi's way of repaying Tsuyoshi. The thought of it remained vivid in his mind. The memories Tsuyoshi shared with Mimi had always been precious. Every moment they spent together had once filled his days with warmth and happiness. The memory of Mimi's bright smile remained vivid in Tsuyoshi's mind. Yet whenever those cherished movements returned to him, his chest immediately began to ache. Tsuyoshi clenched his hand against the pain that rose from those memories. The happiness he once treasured now carried a sorrow he could not escape. A bitter realization quietly settled over him. No matter how precious those feelings had been, everything always seemed to end the same way. Tsuyoshi remembered how things had ended with Hana. He remembered Raka. He remembered that even things with Mimi had ended the same way. Those memories piled up one after another inside Tsuyoshi. Though Tsuyoshi kept trying to believe in other people, the endings never seemed to change. Even when Tsuyoshi tried to believe in other people, he eventually found himself betrayed by them. The memory of that betrayal remained deep within his heart, and Tsuyoshi no longer wanted to suffer that pain again. Tsuyoshi decided to reset everything once again. He no longer wanted to trust other people because he believed he would only end up hurt in the end. The feelings he once had for Mimi disappeared after he started seeing her as a younger sister. Just like before, he chose to erase those feelings and start over. Tsuyoshi looked down at the pair of leather shoes and accepted that they were now nothing more than ordinary shoes to him. The feelings Tsuyoshi had once carried had already faded away, as if they had never existed from the beginning. Now his heart no longer ached because of them. Tsuyoshi realized that the pain that had filled his chest earlier had disappeared. The memories that once hurt him no longer had the power to wound him. Even when Mimi stood before him, just as she did now, Tsuyoshi felt nothing anymore. Mimi stared at Tsuyoshi in surprise. Her words about keeping distance sounded harsh, yet his attention remained fixed on his condition. That contradiction only left Mimi even more confused. Tsuyoshi told Mimi not to stay close to him anymore. Even so, he could not stop himself from noticing her. Tsuyoshi pointed out that Mimi's center of gravity still shifted while running. Tsuyoshi called out to Mimi and urged her to stop running in a way that forced her to hide an old injury. Tsuyoshi reminded her that the injury had already healed, and there was no reason to keep running like that anymore. Mimi quickly tried to stop him. Mimi hoped Tsuyoshi would not speak so harshly, because Shimizu might hear those words. Tsuyoshi decided he would no longer have anything to do with Mimi. The distance he created was firm and left no room for hesitation. Mimi's frustration finally spilled out. Mimi insisted that she had never asked to be watched over by Tsuyoshi from the beginning. The truth was that Mimi had been genuinely annoyed by his constant attention, and the feeling had continued to grow for a long time. Shimizu stood frozen as those words reached him. The realization that Tsuyoshi had been trying so hard to stay close to her only made the atmosphere feel heavier. What Tsuyoshi had done now looked painfully obvious and impossible to hide anymore. Tsuyoshi faced Shimizu and insisted that everything happened because Mimi chose to learn from him. Tsuyoshi believed he had only given advice, and that Mimi had improved through her own effort and desire to grow. Shimizu stared at Tsuyoshi in disbelief. The thought of Mimi trusting someone else felt impossible to him. Shimizu argued that Mimi had been running faster lately, and that her improvement came from the training he had given her. In his mind, every result belonged to his guidance and effort. Mimi stood nearby and quietly admitted that her progress really had come from Shimizu's training. No matter what words were spoken, it seemed neither of them would listen. Tsuyoshi felt there was no point staying involved any longer. As far as he knew, they no longer had any special relationship. That was why Tsuyoshi decided to step away from the situation and leave it behind. Tsuyoshi quietly turned to leave while Shimizu immediately noticed and hurried after him. The sudden movement made Shimizu call out in confusion as he tried to stop Tsuyoshi from walking away. Shimizu quickly reached out and grabbed Tsuyoshi before he could get farther, but he failed. Shimizu looked back uneasily and felt as though Tsuyoshi was staring at him. Shimizu glanced at him and wondered what kind of running form that was. Tsuyoshi suddenly dashed forward. His body moved so fast that it hardly seemed like he was carrying any extra weight at all. He looked nothing like an ordinary member of the track team. Shimizu stared in disbelief and questioned what kind of person Tsuyoshi really was. Mimi called out to Shimizu and pointed out that challenging a race while wearing leather shoes like that was a terrible idea. Tsuyoshi sprinted ahead in his leather shoes while several students watched in shock. They could hardly believe how fast he was moving. Some even realized that Tsuyoshi was running faster than Shimizu despite not wearing proper running shoes. The surprised voices around him did not matter to Tsuyoshi. He kept running without slowing down. As the wind rushed past him, he quietly realized that there really were people who could run that fast. Shimizu struggled to understand what kind of person Tsuyoshi really was. The fact that Tsuyoshi was not even a member of the track club only made his speed seem more unbelievable. Tsuyoshi disappeared farther into the distance and left Shimizu staring after him. A bitter realization settled over Shimizu as he admitted that he could never catch someone who could run that fast while wearing leather shoes. The shock overwhelmed Shimizu and broke his focus. His feet tangled beneath him, and he crashed hard onto the ground before he could stop himself. Tsuyoshi kept running as the wind rushed past him. He did not even know why he was running so fast. His body simply moved on instinct as he tried to get away from both of them. A thought quietly crossed Tsuyoshi's mind. If he had never realized his feelings for Hana, then perhaps Shimizu would never have started following him so closely. Tsuyoshi understood that feelings were created through the connections people formed with one another. Because of that, his relationship with Mimi had also come to an end. As he thought about it more, Tsuyoshi realized that a relationship that could break so easily was never something he truly needed. In his heart, Mimi had only been taking advantage of his kindness. That conclusion removed the sadness from his heart. Tsuyoshi no longer felt the pain that had been weighing him down. Instead, a hollow emptiness quietly spread through him as he continued walking forward in his leather shoes. Tsuyoshi had trusted others 3 times and had been betrayed 3 times. The worn leather shoes resting before him seemed to ask whether he would ever meet someone who could let him enjoy his youth like everyone else. That day, Tsuyoshi thought several times about throwing those damaged shoes away. Even so, he never threw them away. For some reason, he could not bring himself to let them go. When Tsuyoshi was still in elementary school, food was nothing more than a formality to him. Taste never mattered much. As long as there was something to eat, that alone was enough for him. Food was nothing more than a way for Tsuyoshi to fill his stomach and get the nutrition his body needed. If a meal felt lacking, he would simply make up for it with supplements. Taste never held much importance in his life. Everything remained that way until middle school. That was when Tsuyoshi first learned what it meant to have friends and spend time sharing a table with other people. For the first time in his life, Tsuyoshi had friends, and that made him genuinely happy. When he shared meals with them, the food somehow tasted better than before. Even ordinary moments felt warmer because they were spent together. Now all of those feelings had disappeared. The happiness that once filled those memories was gone, and only the memories themselves remained. Tsuyoshi remembered the days when people gathered around his lunch with bright smiles. They eagerly took his carriage and praised how delicious it was. When there was not enough to share, they would even ask for more. He admired the lunch he made himself and called it impressive. Those simple compliments made the effort feel worthwhile. The conversations never stopped there. They talked about live streams they had watched and shared comments they found interesting. Raka noticed Tsuyoshi sitting alone during lunch. When she heard that he wanted to donate part of the money he earned from his part-time job, she was surprised by how much he planned to give. She casually admitted that the amount was not small at all. Meanwhile, the other girls noticed her unusual silence and wondered what was wrong. Their concern reached her, but Raka remained lost in thought as her gaze lingered on Tsuyoshi. Raka quickly assured everyone that nothing was wrong with her. Her bright smile returned, as if to ease their concern. Even so, one of her friends pointed out that Raka had been staring blankly into space a lot lately. The question caught her off guard and left her searching for an answer. Hearing that made Michiba Raka pause. She finally realized that her attention had been wandering more often than usual. Hana stepped into the room with concern on her face. The thought of Tsuyoshi being absent crossed her mind, and she immediately looked for him. Hana heard the whispers around her. The students quietly talked about a girl Tutu had once made cry, and realized that girl was Hana herself. Tsuyoshi offered a brief apology and tried to leave. Before he could walk away, Hana stopped him and called out his name. Confusion filled Hana as she remembered that he and Raka had stopped studying together. Raka stepped forward with a bright smile and invited Tsuyoshi to come with her. Since neither of them had anything planned after school, she wanted him to accompany her. Then Raka casually brought up the rumor everyone had been talking about. She recognized Hana as the girl Tsuyoshi had once rejected, and even mentioned that people said Hana could be surprisingly harsh. The unexpected remark left Hana stunned, while Tsuyoshi quietly watched from behind. Without paying attention to their reactions, Raka simply suggested that she and Tsuyoshi go study together. Hana immediately accused Raka of being the girl who kept bothering Tsuyoshi in karaoke place. She refused to forgive someone who treated him that way. Raka quickly insisted that everything had only been a joke. Even so, she remained unconvinced and fired back that Hana was acting like someone who loved stirring up drama. Raka could not understand why Hana was so obsessed with feelings she could not even admit. In her eyes, it was foolish to like someone yet refuse to say it out loud. Hana expressed and tightened as the words struck a painful place in her heart. Unable to stay silent any longer, she called Hana a liar. The argument only grew louder as Hana fired back and accused Raka of being the real liar between them. A nearby girl awkwardly interrupted and apologized for stepping in. To her, it looked like both Hana and Raka were completely caught up in their fight. Hana and Raka finally noticed that Tsuyoshi had already left. The argument that had pulled all of their attention now felt meaningless. As Tsuyoshi walked away by himself, Hana reflected on what had just happened. Hana and Raka had spent so much time arguing about him, yet the conversation between them had never truly been about Tsuyoshi. Tsuyoshi slowly realized that very little had changed since middle school. Even the simplest exchanges with other people left Tsuyoshi awkward and uncertain. Back then, he could barely hold a conversation with anyone, and making friends had always felt difficult. Hana was always nearby. Her annoyed expression never seemed to disappear, and her presence remained constant beside him. Tsuyoshi never wished for attention or popularity. Becoming the center of the class had never mattered to him. All Tsuyoshi wanted was an ordinary life and the chance to live like everyone else. A peaceful life was the only thing Tsuyoshi truly sought. Yet even that simple wish felt distant. Tsuyoshi sat alone and wondered if someone like him could ever enjoy a normal life the way everyone else seemed to. The thought left him feeling strange and out of place as he quietly accepted that he might simply be different from others. That fragile reflection shattered in an instant when a cheerful voice suddenly called out to him. The unexpected greeting crashed into his peaceful moment and left Tsuyoshi completely startled. Tanaka Haru suddenly appeared before Tsuyoshi by pure coincidence. As a senior from his part-time job, she greeted him with a bright smile and looked genuinely happy to see him again. Haru asked whether she could sit beside Tsuyoshi. He quietly agreed and made room for her without any hesitation. After taking the seat beside him, Haru cheerfully remarked that it had been a long time since they had last met. Her friendly presence immediately filled the space around Tsuyoshi and broke the solitude that had surrounded him only moments earlier. Tanaka was someone who always helped Tsuyoshi during part-time work. Even though they attended the same school, their classes were different, so they rarely had a chance to meet outside of work. Despite her striking appearance, Tanaka was a genuinely kind girl who had supported Tsuyoshi many times. When Tsuyoshi first met Tanaka, she had come across as a very cold person. Her first words had been a blunt question about whether Tsuyoshi was looking for a part-time job. Tanaka quickly insisted that the spilled food had been completely accidental and earnestly swore that it was not done on purpose. Even while looking back, Tanaka firmly remembered telling Tsuyoshi not to do anything reckless and insisting that he did not need to help her. She had tried to keep a distance because she believed they were nothing more than co-workers. Tanaka reminded Tsuyoshi that he still needed to clean up before going home. The sight of the messy workplace stood before him, while her voice carried the familiar firmness of a senior looking after a junior. Tsuyoshi stood frozen for a moment as her words reached him. Silence lingered around him, while he stared ahead without giving an immediate response. Tanaka stood close beside Tsuyoshi and pointed out that a heavily stained frying pan should be cleaned with a fresh sponge. Her advice was simple yet dependable, and it reflected the experience she had gained from working there much longer than him. The sight of Tanaka remaining by his side brought unexpected relief to Tsuyoshi. A quiet sense of happiness settled within him, because she was still there helping him as usual. For Tsuyoshi, there had always been one person capable of explaining things clearly whenever confusion left him lost. That person was Tanaka. Tanaka called out to Tsuyoshi. Tsuyoshi looked at her in confusion when Tanaka suddenly asked whether he wasn't the kind of person who liked to flirt with girls. Tanaka then revealed what she truly thought of him. To her, Tsuyoshi was not someone who toyed with girls' feelings. Instead, he felt like a little brother who needed to be looked after and protected. Tanaka gently called out to Tsuyoshi and tried to get his attention. She wondered whether he had heard the rumors that had been spreading around him lately. An apology escaped Tsuyoshi as understanding crossed his mind. He already knew what situation Tanaka was referring to, and there was no need for further explanation. The unpleasant rumors surrounding Tsuyoshi and his childhood friend had already reached Tanaka's ears. The memory of that incident lingered in her thoughts and left a bitter feeling behind as she recalled everything that had happened after it. Tsuyoshi quietly explained that Hana was no longer connected to him the way people believed. Tanaka immediately rejected that answer. After hearing everything Tsuyoshi had told her about Hana, she found it difficult to accept such a simple conclusion. Since Hana was Tsuyoshi's childhood friend, Tanaka could not understand how things could suddenly become so distant between them. In her mind, they had once been incredibly close, and that history was not something that could simply disappear. At last, Tsuyoshi began to open up. The truth slowly rose to the surface. Tsuyoshi finally revealed everything that had happened. After hearing the full story, Tanaka quietly understood how events had unfolded and why things had reached that point. Tanaka believed that ending everything after becoming such close friends was the wrong choice. In her eyes, a bond that had once been so precious should never have been cut off so easily. Tsuyoshi admitted that he never wanted to feel that pain in his heart again. To protect himself, he chose to rearrange everything and convince himself that moving on was the only answer. Tanaka immediately rejected that conclusion. To her, the feelings Shiyoshi tried so hard to bury had never truly disappeared. No matter how much he tried to move forward, he was only deceiving himself about what still remained in his heart. Tanaka pointed out that Tsuyoshi had never even known Raka or Mimi for very long. Yet Hana was different, because she had been part of his life for years. Tsuyoshi tried once more to insist that the blame rested with him alone. Tanaka told Tsuyoshi that none of this was really his fault. In her eyes, the problem could have been solved if he had simply asked Hana directly instead of carrying every doubt alone. Tanaka wondered whether that precious relationship truly deserved to be abandoned without a proper answer. Tanaka quietly asked whether Tsuyoshi understood how painful it felt to bring everything to an end like that. The sadness in her heart came from seeing a bond that had once meant so much disappear without either side truly facing each other. Tsuyoshi remembered the loneliness that had consumed him back then. The wound in his heart was too deep for him to simply ignore and pretend nothing had happened. Because of that pain, Tsuyoshi chose to rearrange his feelings. Tsuyoshi decided that he wanted to sever every relationship he had built until that point. Tsuyoshi held on to the hope that everything would return to normal afterward. Tanaka quietly accepted Tsuyoshi's feelings and came to understand the pain he had carried for so long. She concluded that perhaps everyone was selfish in their own way. Tanaka pointed to herself and wondered if Tsuyoshi could see how others viewed her. Many people considered Tanaka someone who was skilled at making enemies and creating distance between herself and those around her. Tanaka believed that in situations like that, the best choice was often to ignore the opinions of others. Tsuyoshi wondered whether it was really possible to ignore something like that. The idea felt distant to him. Tanaka admitted that perhaps her words were only shaped by her own experiences. She did not claim to have the perfect answer. Tanaka gazed into the distance as she reflected on the past. The gentle movement of her hair matched the thoughtful expression she carried. Tanaka suddenly realized what she had just revealed and immediately covered her face. The embarrassment hit her all at once, and she desperately wished Tsuyoshi would not look at her in that moment. To her, it felt unbelievably humiliating. Tanaka insisted that although Tsuyoshi might seem ordinary to most people, his natural talent was actually exceptional. She believed others would easily understand that if they paid attention to him. To make up for it, she jokingly decided that Tsuyoshi should buy her a drink next time. In a situation like this, she believed a person should think carefully before speaking. Tsuyoshi remained silent and thoughtful. As he listened to Tanaka, his mind lingered. Tanaka wore a gentle smile as she thought that there was nothing wrong with letting Tsuyoshi remain exactly as he was. Tsuyoshi watched that smile in silence. Tanaka announced that she would be leaving first and lightly patted Tsuyoshi on the shoulder before standing up. Tsuyoshi stopped her and offered his thanks to Tanaka. But then, Tsuyoshi still had something he wanted to say. Tanaka then mentioned a cafe that served delicious juice. He asked whether she would be willing to go with him. The invitation came unexpectedly and carried more courage than any words he had spoken before. He had only suggested that they go together another time. Yet those simple words remained in Tsuyoshi's heart. Haru paused in place after hearing Tsuyoshi's invitation. She immediately accepted Tsuyoshi's invitation and happily agreed to go with him. The answer came without hesitation and carried a bright warmth that reached him at once. As Tsuyoshi looked ahead, he accepted that the relationships he had built were worth keeping. The people who had become part of his life were no longer something he wanted to leave behind. He realized that feelings born from kindness could eventually disappear, and that those feelings had become the source of pain in her heart. A message appeared on Hana's phone. Tsuyoshi wanted to talk with Hana one more time, and those words quietly reached her. He understood that kindness could sometimes become the cause of heartbreak. The wounds left behind were not something that could simply be ignored. He believed that what had been reset could never truly return. After a mistake that could not be forgiven, he could not stop wondering what Hana had been thinking when everything happened. The morning was filled with lively chatter. A group of girls noticed their friend's new haircut. They thought it suited her well, and she happily thanked them for the compliment. Several students excitedly talked about the drama they had watched yesterday. The story had been so amazing that they still could not stop discussing it. Tsuyoshi walked through the noisy morning crowd. A girl from the special class came into view for a moment. People talked all around him, yet he remained alone. A question quietly crossed Tsuyoshi's mind. Since when had things become like this? Everyone seemed to have friends by their side. Hana also looked happy among them. While everyone enjoyed time with their friend, Tsuyoshi had no one beside him. The loneliness in his heart only grew stronger. Tsuyoshi recognized Sasaki from the same class. Even though her face and name were familiar, they had never spoken to each other before. Tsuyoshi also recognized Kinzaki and Yamada. They were classmates whose faces he knew well, yet no real conversation had ever passed between them. Tadoro and Hashiake were the same. Their names remained in his memory, but they were still strangers to him. Yet the future would likely remain unchanged. They would continue attending the same school without ever truly speaking to one another. Tanaka suddenly called out to Tsuyoshi with a bright greeting. She noticed that he had arrived earlier than usual and naturally started a conversation with him. As they walked together, Tanaka remembered their promise to visit a cafe someday. The memory seemed important to her, and she happily brought it up again. Tanaka spoke with excitement about meeting during a day off and going out after her part-time work ended. Tsuyoshi quietly accepted the suggestion and agreed without objection. The thought alone seemed to please Tanaka. She looked forward to eating something sweet together. For several reasons, Tanaka had gradually become someone special to Tsuyoshi. Perhaps it was because she had helped him during his part-time job. Her bright smile remained in his thoughts longer than expected. As they prepared to part ways, Tsuyoshi gathered a little courage. He wondered if Tanaka would be willing to share her contact information with him. Tanaka looked surprised for a moment. Then he admitted that he did not have her contact information either. The realization seemed natural to her after everything they had talked about. Tanaka happily suggested exchanging contact information. Tanaka happily agreed to exchange contact information. She invited Tsuyoshi to bring his phone closer so they could register each other's contact details. Just as they were about to exchange contacts, a message suddenly appeared on Tsuyoshi's phone. The sender was Hana. The message carried a simple request. Hana wanted to speak with Tsuyoshi once more and hoped he would reply. The unexpected message immediately caught Tsuyoshi's attention. He realized that a message had arrived from Hana. Tanaka glanced toward the message on Tsuyoshi's phone. Ignoring a message from a girl without even reading it felt like a bad thing to do. After a brief pause, Tanaka realized the standing a distance is Hana. She noticed Hana ahead of him. She had arrived earlier than usual and was walking alone. The sight immediately caught his attention. As Hana continued toward the school building, Tsuyoshi found himself watching her figure that a quiet question surfaced in Tsuyoshi's mind. Hana was usually surrounded by her friends. Seeing her by herself today felt unusual. A notification appeared on the phone screen. The friend request had been accepted without any problem. Tanaka encouraged Tsuyoshi to go ahead first. The suggestion caught him by surprise and left him briefly confused. Tanaka noticed Hana ahead of them near the school entrance. Her attention naturally shifted toward Hana. Without giving Tsuyoshi time to refuse, Tanaka lightly pushed him forward. She urged him on and encouraged him to go. Tanaka felt this was a good opportunity. Since Hana was right there, she thought Tsuyoshi should simply talk to her. Tsuyoshi thanked Tanaka for everything. Tanaka cheerfully looked forward to seeing him again later. Tanaka happily waved her phone and said goodbye for now. With Tanaka's encouragement still lingering in his mind, Tsuyoshi headed toward Hana. The distance between them slowly grew shorter as he followed after her. Watching Tsuyoshi leave left Tanaka in a surprisingly good mood. A small laugh escaped her as she imagined their future outing together. The thought of asking for even more sweet treats made her smile with quiet satisfaction. As Tsuyoshi walked toward Hana, old thoughts returned to his mind. Part of him felt that this situation could be solved if he simply asked her directly. Perhaps ignoring everything without seeking an answer was not the right choice. Perhaps none of this had been Hana's fault from the beginning. Questions that had remained unanswered still lingered between them and refused to disappear. Tanaka's encouragement gave Tsuyoshi the final push he needed. Rather than continue running from the situation, he decided to face Hana at last. Tsuyoshi stopped and called out Hana's name. Hannah suddenly heard her name and stopped walking. The familiar voice made her turn around at once. When she saw Tsuyoshi standing there, she could hardly believe it was really him. Tsuyoshi faced Hannah directly and asked for a little of her time. Having finally made his decision, he stood before her without looking away.